Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 41 of 2025. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media /the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by Circa Sports. For the best contests in all the land, please visit circasports.com/contests. Sign up in person, play from anywhere in the world. If you'd like to support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com. Click shop, become a member, pick any. For winning cappers, get their premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. And if nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers to become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. Had a whirlwind of a weekend, my friends. Belmont Stakes went extremely well for me because I basically picked first, second, and third. I said it was going to be Justify Sovereignty. Just kind of flip-flopped them with the exacta box. The only exacta box I played was Journalism and Sovereignty ended up beating them at the end by a pretty good amount, too. I guess gun to the head, I said I'd pick Sovereignty because the odds were better, and that we beat Journalism once, and I just kind of felt like that, but it wasn't good enough to pick a horizontal pick that for the win or place. In my opinion, I thought I did better investing the $150 and winning on the trifectas and the superfectas and the exactas. It was a $25 exacta box, so $50 was exactas, but we also had a $10 trifecta and a $5 trifecta we hit and a $1 super that we hit. But the problem is that they are such favorites that I only netted $235 from a $150 bet. So after hitting all those large tries, only ended up paying a grand total of $385. So we netted $235. It's kind of weird to hit such big tries, in horse racing, and then all of a sudden your net's small. But that's how it is. We bet the favorites, and the favorites would win. UFC was a little bit south here. I would have been much better if Pena and Harrison went the distance. Lost two bets because of that, but we're going to regroup here for UFC UFC Atlanta this weekend, and there's a pretty big fun card, coming up for that. Maybe I can mention that at the end of the show. I do have a dog that I like, and we will get to that. But we have a great show for you today because Joshua Nunn from the Action app, as well as Covers, is going to come on and break down some college football. We get a little bit back into college football, but I'm also going to talk and finish up our NFL previews with the AFC East and the AFC West. Our last two are going to be broken down here, from a high level, and give you a few numbers that I like and a few bets that I like. So I'll be able to do all that. But before we get into that, we have the U.S. Open to talk about, and I want to mention a little bit about the new Illinois sports betting tax briefly as well. And so real quick on the sports betting tax, this is absolutely ludicrous what they're doing. And I don't care what side you're on, and this is not a political show, but these people that are putting these taxes in are just trying to squeeze as much out of as possible out of the consumer. They've been doing it for years. That's why prices are so expensive out there. And it just blows my mind that these people keep getting elected because FanDuel is going to put the tax right on the consumer. And why not? I'm not mad at FanDuel for doing that. Some of the other books are going to maybe do things a little differently, maybe take it out of some of the future bets. And that's why you got to shop around. Maybe a little more respectable, I guess. But I'm just more upset at the politicians out there, the corrupt vacuum cleaners out there that just keep stealing from you. And it's like legalized stealing because they're elected. It blows my mind that people keep electing these massive pigs, because that's what they are. I'm extremely pissed about this because it's ruining everything that PASPA just gave us and squeezing everybody, making it more impossible to beat the books. because the taxes you have to pay the government is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, they're not doing it on stock trades. Why aren't you doing it on stock trades? You're still betting a future that it goes up or down. Trading stocks is a way of betting, but obviously they don't, because these people are just clueless in what they're doing. They're probably the worst people for any type of job out there. And I'm scared that other states are going to keep doing it. And I would suggest that you find other means or older means that you used to use when it comes to betting. I even feel like minus 110 is a little bit high for what we're used to. And I think lots of the peer-to-peer betting platforms are going to be a lot more attractive within the next couple of years themselves. So I'm just completely frustrated with what's going on over there in Illinois and New York. And it absolutely blows my mind how greedy these people are over there. I'm very disgusted by this whole situation. Back on the positive note, U.S. Open coming up, and I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm just going to make four. I'm going to take 4 golfers right now. Maybe I'll add one later. But I don't care that Scheffler's odds are plus 280. The live odds on him are so miss. It's not even hit or miss. It's mostly miss because you pay a big tax on the live Scheffler stuff. You can't. It's like you can't get ahead of it. And I'll take the plus 280 right now that they're offering, and just put the most money on that one. I in my opinion, I think that he is so good that maybe it is more accurately priced. So he's the one that I'm going to play, and I'm going to play it so if he wins, it covers my other bets, because for probably the same amount of money I'm putting on him, I'm going to split the other ones a little bit more on Rory. I'm betting Rory because everybody else isn't. The whole place is going away from him. He still won the Masters, and people say he doesn't care, and his driver's all over the place, but who knows what's going to happen by the time he gets to Oakmont, which is a very difficult course, but he has the skill to do it, and maybe his practice round of shooting 81 and making it public is something that helps him. He's going to be knee-deep in competition, and this is a major. So it's like maybe he doesn't care more about the smaller tournaments now. He got off the Schneid hitting the career Grand Slam this year, but maybe he really puts a huge effort for it. Now you're getting 12, 13, 14 to 1. I think Rory, I'm going to play him because nobody else is. And the other ones that I like are Shane Lowry. I like Shane Lowry for a few bucks at 50 to 1. I think Lowry has the skill to win this. He's hot right now. He can hit the small windows that Oakmont puts out. Shane Lowry is number 2 in approach to green, shots gained approach to green right now, which I think is big. So I'm excited to play him a little bit. And why not Sam Burns, who gave it away last week, but his putting is still number 1 in the PGA. I mean, why not give him a shot here at 80 to 1? I think maybe he kind of redeems what happens last week and wins the major. So, that's what I like here. I might add a guy later. But that's how I'm going to attack the U.S. Open, and, hopefully it all works out. I know a lot of trendy picks are Schauffele right now and Bryson DeChambeau, who's like 7 to 1, but I don't know. DeChambeau, I think that the fairways are too thin for a guy like him, and he can get in a lot of trouble. So that's what we're going to go with here for the U.S. Open. But today, it's all about football. So let's get into our preview, starting with the AFC East. This segment is sponsored by Liqueur gummies that prevent hangovers. You guys like to drink? Well, I certainly do, but I don't like the hangovers. Liqueur gummies combine DHM, milk thistle, B vitamins, and ginger root to help your body recover after drinking. They fight fatigue, nausea, and dehydration, so you wake up feeling refreshed. Try them for faster recovery. Enjoy an exclusive discount with my promo code ODDS. 20% off any product at Liqueur drinking gummies that get rid of your hangovers. Visit this podcast description or go to liquure.com. Use the promo code odds. All right, AFC East 2025 preview, season win totals, and best bet. When am I going to stop betting the Jets is the first thing I wrote here. It's like, Jesus, I'm done with them. And, of course, now maybe they'll be good, right? New coach. No, I'm still done with them. The AFC East was actually terrible last year minus Josh Allen. And I thought Josh Allen was the guy that really does everything for the Bills. And Miami, once again, they're injured a lot, no defense. And, actually, their defense was halfway decent. Their offense, for some reason, didn't show up. The Patriots were supposed to be the worst team in the NFL. It kind of showed some life at the end of the season. And this year, the AFC East plays the NFC South and the AFC North, which I would call a pretty dang easy draw. It gets even easier when a team up top gets to play the teams on the bottom. So you'll see how that breaks out here. And that's why your divisional odds are the Bills a massive favorite. Minus 260. The Patriots next at plus 475. The Dolphins plus 650. And the Jets are plus 1,800. Starting with the Bills, Vegas win total 11.5, juice to the over, minus 170. 2024 wins were 13. Pythagorean wins 12.15. Schedule is going to be easy. At large versus Kansas City, at Houston, and versus Philadelphia. Schedule last year was medium hard. Key losses, wide receiver Mac Hollins. And then there's 4 guys not signed, and I don't think they're going to be signed. Edge Von Miller, wide receiver Amari Cooper, cornerback Rasul Douglas, and defensive tackle Austin Johnson. Key additions, wide receiver Josh Palmer, outside linebacker Michael Holt, edge Joey Bosa, defensive end Larry Ogunjobi, cornerback Tre'Davious White, wide receiver Elijah Moore, cornerback Dane Jackson is back. Key draft picks, cornerback Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, defensive line TJ Sanders, edge Landon Jackson, and a bunch of dudes. Summary. Once again, Damar Hamlin got cheated from comeback player of the year after he cheated death. He actually played too for real this year, and he did pretty good. I'm not at all bitter about that 100-1 that I missed out on, but anyways, the Bills were 3 zebras away from making the Super Bowl. Getting over the hump is got to be the goal for this team, and playing close games have not turned out that well for them in the playoffs. What I will say is that this year Buffalo has the easiest shot of securing the number 1 overall seed. The schedule is disgustingly easy for a team of this caliber. The Bills did not lose much to free agency, but Von Miller, he was washed. Amari Cooper's just borrowed due to injuries. I like this team and what they did in free agency. Josh Palmer's an underrated receiver. Elijah Moore can stretch the field. James Cook is back. He's going to lead the running backs. My biggest concern just remains at health. Josh Allen is the best playmaker in all the NFL, and he hopefully doesn't get hurt, obviously. And Joey Bosa has got health issues usually too. So can he stay healthy for a full season, or at least come back for the playoffs? Maybe take the last third off. I'm starting to like that whole take the last third of the season off more and more. The more that I watch how these guys get hurt at the end of the year. Not going to lie, it's something that's not talked about enough in the NFL. I like the draft in Maxwell Hairston. I think he's a great corner coming on in, and you're going to have a beefed up defensive line now too with TJ Sanders and edge Landon Jackson and Larry Ogunjobi. I'm liking what they did. They get their hardest opponents all at home. They get the Chiefs at home and the Eagles at home for at large, and they also get the Ravens at home for playing the AFC North. This is fantastic for them. The sky's the limit for Buffalo, and this is the year that I think they do it. I'm picking this team to win the Super Bowl, but so does many people. But my season win total number is disgustingly high, and I don't think I remember mine being this high in years or ever, actually. 15.08. I think that they can win 15 games because of the fact they get all their hardest games at home. Over 11.5 is the play. I found it at minus 145 on FanDuel, so I would grab that. That's the bet. 1 star, and to be the number 1 seed, I would put a little bit on that too, plus 275. I think they have the path to be the number 1 seed, and if you want to get cute and have the Bills win the Super Bowl, which I think they have a good shot to do, You can do that for 0.5 stars as well. I love the Bills. Their power rating, 6.75 points better than the average team. They'll be competing with the Ravens, in my opinion, for the number 1 seed. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins. Vegas win total 8.5, juice to the under, -160. 2024 wins were 8. Pythagorean wins 7.95. Scheduled medium easy this year at large at Indianapolis versus LA Chargers and versus Washington in Madrid, Spain. Schedule last year was easy. Key losses: safety Javon Holland, defensive end Calais Campbell, guard Robert Jones, defensive end Emmanuel Ogba, tight end Dermon Smythe. Defensive end Deshaun Hand, safety Ciaran Neal, running back Raheem Mostert, and there's 2 guys not signed, cornerback Kendall Fuller and running back Jeff Wilson. Key additions: guards center James Daniels, inside linebacker Tyrell Dodson, quarterback Zach Wilson, wide receiver Nick Westbrook, cornerback Ifutu Melifanu, safety Ashton Davis, and tackle Larry Borum. You also have the draft in defensive line Kenneth Grant, who I love. Offensive line Jonah Savanilia. Defensive line Jordan Phillips. Cornerback Jason Marshall. And quarterback Quinn Ewers. How interesting was that? Quinn Ewers. Summary. The Miami Dolphins stuck in mediocre land with a defense that somehow ranked 8th in opponent EPA. So that's kind of weird. Their offense was the bad one, ranking 22nd. And it's weird to have that when you have an offensive coach like Mike McDaniel. It should be unacceptable. What's even more unacceptable is what we've been saying the last few years. It's Tua. He's a walking time bomb, 1 concussion away from missing multiple weeks or more. What's the Dolphins' contingency plan? Zach Wilson. I would have preferred someone like a Tannehill, bring him back, or like a Teddy Bridgewater, maybe Carson Wentz. I don't know. Not that these are great, but geez, man. Zach Wilson, we don't know if he's any good. Maybe Quinn Ewers comes in and rips it up, like Brock Purdy kind of did for the Niners, but I wouldn't bet on that. The Dolphins, they lost a few running backs to free agency. I do like how they drafted Grant and some defensive line there, but there's just nothing that exciting minus Tyreek Hill on this team. You got Jalen Waddle there, though, and Ramsey wants to be traded on defense, so we'll see what's going to happen there. Just can't trust this team. That's the problem. They were, really highly ranked the last few years before the season, especially 2 years ago. They were a pretty dang good team, but their schedule is nice that it ranks 2nd in net days rest. They get plus 11 net days rest. If it's not the Bills winning this division, I would rather bet the Dolphins at 600 to 1, 650 to 1 over the Patriots, but at the end of the day, I'm not super impressed by them, and I just can't trust it, and I think the Bills are still the team to beat. But I will say they might steal one against the Bills this year, so we'll be watching for those lines. My number is 8.58 wins, very close to the market on this one at 8.5 juice to the under, so I'm going to lean over, but barely. Miami Dolphins power ratings to start is going to be 1 point above average. New England Patriots, I have at number 3. Vegas win total 8.5 juice to the over, -120. 2024 wins was 4. Pythagorean wins 4.95. Schedule is going to be easy at large versus Las Vegas, at Tennessee, and versus the New York Giants. Schedule last year was medium easy. Key losses: coach Gerard Mayo, quarterback Jacoby Brissett. Funny, I feel like Brissett's another name you could have threw on the Dolphins too. Cornerback Jonathan Jones. Defensive end Dedrick Wise, and then 2 guys not signed are inside linebacker Jaquan Bentley and center David Andrews. Key additions: coach Mike Vrabel, defensive tackle Milton Williams, wide receiver Stephon Party on a Boat Diggs, cornerback Carlton Davis, edge Harold Landry, linebacker Robert Spillane, tackle Morgan Moses, center Garrett Bradbury, wide receiver Mac Hollins, quarterback Joshua Dobbs, outside linebacker Kalavion Chason, and defensive tackle Chris Tonga, safety Marcus Epps, safety Jalen Hawkins. That's a lot, man. Key draft picks, tackle Will Compton, running back Travion Henderson, and wide receiver Kyle Williams, center Jared Wilson. So the summary with the Pats is that they're the most hyped team in the NFL right now. Watching their season win total go up from 4 to 8.5 is just really something, man. That is a lot of change. I'm going to start with the coach here, Gerard Mayo. He was only a placeholder for Mike Vrabel, let's face it. I like Mike Vrabel, and I give the Dolphins a pretty big upgrade. Sorry, the Patriots a pretty big upgrade because of him. But, I don't care about the politics of you think Mayo should have stayed longer. He did lose the locker room later, which also feel like a smelly setup. But at the same time, this team spent a ton of money in the offseason. They had the most to spend, and they spent it. And I got to like that. I also like quarterback Drake May. He seems to be turning out. And he's probably turning into the franchise guy that they hoped. But this number is massive. Even though this team upgraded at almost every single position, it's just too much to go to 8.5 wins, in my opinion. I don't like the pass catchers on this team. I mean, Stephon Diggs, he just is messing up in the offseason. He's saying some really weird stuff. I don't think it's a good look for this team. And here's the other two receivers, Kyle Williams and Demario Douglas. Very below average guys. Tight end Hunter Henry is past his prime. Austin Hooper has also been on the slide, so I don't expect a lot from the tight end position. I do expect a great defense under Vrabel, but I expect this offense to struggle still. You have to remember that last season, the Patriots' schedule was ranked quite easy, even though they seemed to turn it up at the end. I disagree with the market here. I think 8 wins is the ceiling. 8.5 is too much. 7 wins would even be a successful season. Going from 4 to 7 wins, right? I mean, that'd be a great season in my opinion. I'm going to take the under. My number is 7.45 wins, and I feel like I'm being generous. They're going to get better as the year goes on, but under 8.5 is the play for 1 star.
All I do is win, no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
The Patriots' power rating will start at minus 3.5 points, worse than the average team. So I have them starting out pretty bad, but I expect them to go and get better, maybe get close to an average team by midseason. And that's the problem with doing power rated season win totals. I mean, you have the power rating and you have all the odds for them going straight through across the board. But if you really think a team's going to improve because like they have a great coach now, I think that throws things off a little bit. Something I've never really discussed on this show a little bit before. So that's interesting. Number 4, the New York Jets, Vegas win total 5.5, juice to the over minus 160. And their 2024 wins were 5. Pythagorean wins were 6.66. Schedule's medium. At large versus Dallas, versus Denver and London, and at Jacksonville. Schedule last year was medium easy. Key losses, coach Robert Saleh. Wide receiver Devontae Adams, cornerback DJ Reed, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, edge Hassan Reddick, quarterback Aaron Rodgers, tackle Morgan Moses. I wrote Oregon Moses. I'm glad I remember that. Tight end Tyler Conklin, defensive end Solomon Thomas, cornerback Brandon Eccles, safety Ashton Davis, guard Wes Schweitzer, and 2 guys not signed are linebacker CJ Mosley, who's been there forever, and left tackle Tyron Smith. Key additions, Coach Aaron Glenn from the Lions, defensive coordinator, right? Quarterback Justin Fields, cornerback Brandon Stevens, safety Andre Sisco, wide receiver Josh Reynolds, center Josh Myers, and cornerback Chris Boyd. Who they drafted, tackle Armand Membao. You also had tight end Mason Taylor. You had Arian Smith, a wide receiver. And you had cornerback Azariah Thomas. And my thoughts here are from Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields. What could go wrong? You know? I can tell you what's not going to go wrong. I'm going to laugh my ass off during this Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Jets first game of the season. That is a must watch for just comedy reasons only. But going from Robert Saleh to Aaron Glenn isn't exactly my idea of an upgrade. It's kind of like an assumption that Robert Saleh wasn't a good coach, and Aaron Glenn, also coming from a defensive coordinator position, is a good coach. How do you know? Robert Saleh looked great on the Niners with that defense. Aaron Glenn had a lot of injuries, but I don't know what's real there. Glenn was fine on the Lions, but I just don't see him as a great coaching prospect. Then Rodgers to Fields. Fields is a hybrid, right? He's a hybrid quarterback that can run the ball well, but not throw it good enough to be an NFL starter, at least not right now. He also turns the ball over when he gets into bad situations, when people are pressuring him, when he's feeling flustered. The Jets lived on their defense last year, but they only ranked 21st in opponent EPA, and the Jets played, pretty bad most of the year. Whenever they played anybody with a pulse, they got destroyed. The Jets lost a lot of talent too. I mean, the only two guys that I trust in the defense is Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. Those are the only real big names left anyway. This feels a lot like the Giants defense from last year. A couple studs and that's it. This draft wasn't sexy. I like the tackle, in Memembao, but I don't know that much about him. I don't know if he's going to develop. The Jets lost a lot more than they gained, I think. Schedule shapes up okay, but, they did underachieve last year from the Pythag, 6.66, but you can't go by that with all this change, with Rodgers gone and with Devontae Adams gone and a new coach. How can you trust a Pythag from last year? This team could have the worst results out of anybody. I didn't bet it yet, but I'm considering 4.33 is my win total, and that's pretty dang low. I lean to the under right now of the 5.5 that the Vegas is dealing, and I'm considering taking it. I haven't taken it yet just because I have so many bets in this division. But, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if they only won 4 games here. Lean to the under, and their power rating is going to be at -6. So that's where we're starting with the old Jets. All right, let's switch to our final division preview, and that's the AFC West. And their season win totals, best bets. This was kind of a weak division. Weaker than I expected, right? All 4 coaches interestingly have been to Super Bowls. Every single coach in this division has been to a Super Bowl, and 3 of them have won Super Bowls. Isn't that just mind-blowing? Jim Harbaugh hasn't gotten back there for a while, but that's because he just got a national championship in Michigan. So really all 4 of these coaches are champions. Pete Carroll won it both, USC and Seattle. The biggest question is if the Chiefs are ever going to falter, and can the other great coaches catch up? Where are the big personnel changes? We'll go over that. This division plays the AFC South and the NFC East, which I would call pretty favorable draw. The AFC South is garbage, and the AFC East is kind of top-heavy. Let's see how it all shakes out. The divisional odds are Chiefs at -120, the Broncos at +300, the Chargers at +310, the Raiders at +2,000. Starting with the Chiefs, Vegas win to 11.5, juice to the under -120, 2024 wins 15. And Pythagorean wins 10.2. You adjust for turnovers, it's lower. Schedule's hard at large versus Baltimore, versus Detroit, and at Buffalo. Schedule last year was hard, though. And they still won all those games. Key losses, guard Joe Thuney, defensive tackle Tershawn Wharton, safety Justin Reed, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, kind of a borrowed guy there, wide receiver Justin Watson, who's been there a while, outside linebacker Joshua Unch, running back Samaje Perine, who was there for a stint, a couple years, And wide receiver Mecole Hardman, who seems to always come back mid-season somehow. Key additions, tackle Jalen Moore, cornerback Christian Fulton, defensive end Charles Omenihu, and running back Elijah Mitchell. Key draft picks, tackle Josh Simmons, defensive line Omar Norman Lott, and cornerback Noel Williams. Last season, the Chiefs did the Chiefs things. They win games and they go to Super Bowls. That's what they do. You can't quantify this team because on paper they just look a bit above average. Great playmakers, great coaching, and a lot of love from the NFL. And the luck ranking from this team was the highest I've ever seen. And you can see that at team rankings. 5.2 was their luck ranking, and that's even a couple points ahead of the Vikings, who were second at 3.2. It just blows your mind to see that. The formula to get to the Chiefs is to, at least to bet the Chiefs, I should say, not just get to the Chiefs. You got to win the close games, right? But as short favorites, you bet on them. Or short dogs, you bet on them. But man, when they're large favorites, anything over 6, you fade them, because they're not blowing out teams. And they're getting a lot of things happening at the end to help them through. They should have lost outright to the Falcons and the Panthers. We know what happened during those games. The Chiefs, they only ranked 9th on EPA and offense, which is okay, that's definitely above average. It's good, but 15th on defense. This just tells you this was just an above average to good team. They shouldn't have won 15 games. Their Pythagorean just completely sniffs that out. And sure, there's clutch, like I've said the last few years, and Mahomes is clutch. But you also have to remember that this team tanked their last regular season game. They purposely lost it because they already had home field, and they were 15-1, and they lost 30-some to nothing. And they could have won 16 games. I think the Chiefs are getting older in key areas. Tight end Travis Kelce took a large step back last season. Patrick Mahomes may not be considered old yet, but maybe the finer things in life has gotten to him some. He's got kids. Maybe his competitiveness does take a hit because of all other stuff going on when you get paid millions. I still think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. Best positional quarterback, even though Josh Allen's the best playmaker in the NFL. I think Lamar is right there with Josh Allen, just a smidge under as a playmaker. But the good news for Kansas City is that they're trying to fix their offensive line. They did lose some pieces over the years. They draft Ohio State guy and pick up Jalen Moore. The receiving crew could be fine with Hollywood Brown, rookie sensation Xavier Worthy, so they're still intact, even though you lost a few guys there. And I expect Noah Gray to steal more of Kelsey's reps this season as well. So the only directions I can go with the Chiefs, though, is at 11.5 is under, because regression is going to happen sooner than later unless the NFL wants to be embarrassed again. I'm taking the Chiefs under, and my number is 10.1 wins. Under 11.5 wins for 1 star is the play. And the Chiefs' power rating is going to start 3.5 points above average. The Los Angeles Chargers. Vegas win total 9.5. 2024 wins were 11. Pythagorean wins 11.37. Schedules medium at large at Miami versus Minnesota and versus Pittsburgh. Schedule last year was medium. Key losses: running back J.K. Dobbins, edge Joey Bosa, cornerback Christian Fulton, wide receiver Josh Palmer, defense tackle Poona Ford, linebacker Nick Neiman, and defensive end Morgan Fox. Key additions: guard Mekhi Becton, cornerback Donta Jackson, running back Najee Harris, wide receiver Mike Williams is back on the Bolts. Tyler Conklin comes from the Jets, a tight end, and cornerback Benjamin St. Juste. Key draft picks: running back Omarion Hampton, wide receiver Trey Harris, defensive line Mamari Caldwell, edge Kyle Kennard. Summary: Jim Harbaugh does Jim Harbaugh things. Going from 5 to 11 wins is quite something. And if it wasn't for KOC, Jim might have gotten the coach of the year. But in saying that, there aren't many coaches that I trust more than Harbaugh. This coach instills belief in the guys. They just let J.K. Dobbins walk after having a great year, and that was barely hindered by injuries. He's about trenches. Najee Harris was signed on this team, so I even think that's an upgrade from J.K. Dobbins. Drafting Omari and Hampton tells you that they're going to run the ball. They're going to be run-focused, and I just do not see a large problem about shedding Joey Bosa because it was just too hard to keep the guy healthy. I do like the addition of guard Mekhi Becton and tight end Tyler Conklin. The Chargers are building a team that's going to want to punch you in the mouth, right? They don't like complainers like maybe Dobbins has been. And Dobbins has been a complainer. After all his injured years, he wanted to, a bunch of money to stay with the Ravens. It's like, dude, you haven't done nothing. You've been injured. I don't know what these people are thinking. And it's partially because of the agents, but I'm sure they're pretty fine with Omari and Hampton and Najee Harris right now. It's like, dude, see ya. This is just a great coach. And I bet on coaches. And I expect that they're just going to keep low-scoring games, running the clock, winning the way that Harbaugh teams do. The Bolts ranked 12th in offensive EPA and last year 5th on defense. They have a winnable schedule. Jim's going to do it Jim ways. I like the Chargers to win the division. I do. I like them to go over their win total. I like 11.19 wins. At plus 300, you get them to win the AFC West, but I'm going to partner this with another bet, and you'll see in a few minutes. And I also like Chargers over 9.5 wins for plus 105. You're getting plus money on that. It's like they win 11 games, and the second year you think Harbaugh's going to take a back seat. Not in my opinion. I love this. Chargers over 9.5 wins for 1 star.
But they are who we thought they were.
I'm going to start the Chargers power rating at 2.75 points better than the average team. Number 3, Denver Broncos. Vegas win total 9.5. 2024 wins were 10. Pythagorean wins was actually the highest in this division, 11.61. Schedule's medium at large versus Cincinnati, versus New York Jets in London, and versus Green Bay. Schedule last year was medium easy. Key losses: linebacker Cody Barton, quarterback Zach Wilson, cornerback Traymon Smith, running back Javonte Williams. Key additions: safety Talanoa Hufunga, linebacker Dre Greenwald, tight end Evan Ingram. Key draft picks: cornerback Jahdae Barron, running back R.J. Harvey, wide receiver Pat Bryant, edge Savion Jones, and edge Quandarius Robinson. And the summary: the Broncos kicked ass last season in improvement. That was massive again. Good free agency moves, drafting well. Bo Nix turned out great. Solid coaching. Sean Payton, I want to pick this Broncos team apart really bad because it just feels like they're just so fortunate, but their Pythagorean wins states that they underachieved. It's kind of like, this is tough. It's more of a head scratcher to me. So I had to look a little bit deeper here. The Broncos, they had number 1 EPA per play in defense in the league. Number 1. While the offense ranked 16th, in EPA. So it's just number 1 defense. I give them a ton of credit, but here's the thing. When you look deeper in last year's schedule, they just beat a ton of tomato cans really bad. And they exaggerated their stats in those games. Their last game against the Chiefs was against their 3rd string when they won that 38-0 game. The Chiefs could have had 16 wins if they tried to win that game possibly, right? The Broncos' best win last year, not counting the Chiefs, was week 3 at Tampa Bay. Week 3. Otherwise, they lost every game that they played with a team with a pulse that finished 500 or better. That's where you got to look into this team. That's what you got to worry about. The good news for Denver, they still have Bo Nix on a rookie deal. So they went out and paid for some playmakers, second to only the Patriots probably. They filled some holes. I'm not a big fan of their receiving core, though. They lost Javonte Williams as a running back. I thought that was a head-scratcher because I thought he was very good for this team. You wonder if a sophomore slump's coming for Bo Nix. nothing would surprise me with this team. But if the Broncos win this division, I also would not be surprised if they take last place, though. I wouldn't be that surprised either, just because of the way that they just beat the bad teams last year, I think that what we're going to do is we're going to play them with the Chargers. We're going to fade the Chiefs and the Raiders, right? So the way you do it is you take both. You take plus 300 on both. It's only kind of turns out to be, plus 150 type play because, obviously you're taking half the division, 2 bets at plus 300. So you got to make your adjustments and you can still lose this by the other 2 winning it. Right. It'd be great if you can cash one of them because you get plus 300. But then you minus out your half unit and you're actually getting paid plus 250. But the truth is that because you're betting more and could lose more, it only comes up to around plus 150 to take 2 plus 300s. I like the Denver Broncos still, even though I just kind of cut them down. They still could take a step forward, but I also could see them going backwards. I got them 1.75 points better than the average team. Let's see if they destroy some of the sharp bettors that they did this last year when it comes to this year. Number 4, the Las Vegas Raiders. Vegas win total 6.5 juice to the over, minus 145. 2024 wins was 4. Pythagoreans wins 5.14. Schedule is going to be medium at large at New England versus Chicago and versus Cleveland. Schedule last year was medium. Key losses: coach Antonio Pierce, safety Trayvon Moehrig, cornerback Nate Hobbs, linebacker Robert Spillane, linebacker Divine Diablo, linebacker Kalavion Chason, safety Marcus Epps, and the 2 guys not signed are guard Cody Whitehair and tackle Andreas Pete. Key additions. I had to put this one. I've never put an owner down before, but 10% owner, Tom Brady. Coach Pete Carroll, quarterback Geno Smith, safety Jeremy Chin, guard Alex Kappa, cornerback Eric Stokes, outside linebacker Landon Roberts, cornerback Lonnie Johnson, running back Raheem Mostert, tight end Ian Thomas, and defensive tackle Leki Fatu. Key draft picks: Ashton Genty at running back, wide receiver Jack Beck, cornerback Darian Porter, guard Caleb Rogers, tackle Charles Grant. Summary: another year, another new head coach for the Raiders. This team unfortunately has transient syndrome where the fans outnumber their own fans many times in Las Vegas. That's tough. Arizona's got it a little bit. Tampa Bay gets it a little bit. But the strange thing for the Raiders is that Geno Smith's coming aboard here, and his old mentor Pete Carroll, is it an upgrade? Absolutely. It's an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell, but it's not going to get them to the dance. It's just the Raiders were just kind of weird last season. They would meddle in some games as they beat teams like the Ravens and kept the Chiefs close enough to cover both of those games. Almost actually beat them the year before in Christmas, but they almost beat them, losing by 2 points the Friday after Thanksgiving, which must have made a lot of Survivor people pretty nervous. But there was just no substance with this team. Antonio Pierce took a lot of the blame. I feel like this was another situation where he had everything going against him anyway. He had no chance to last. During 2024, the Raiders actually had a halfway decent defense, ranking 14th in EPA. It was that dreadful offense that set them back to 31st in EPA, 31st on offense. That was horrible. But for 2025, I got to upgrade them some. They got a proven quarterback, a winning coach. I'm just not going to go overboard here. The Raiders are going to get better as the season progresses, but they're not going to contest for this division. I have them winning 7.58 games. I'm probably just staying away from this one. It's juiced to the over at 6.5, but I'm just going to lean the over here. I'm going to give their power rating at a -3 to start, and I think that could go up pretty quick, just because the upgrades and coaches, and once this team gets a little bit comfortable. If I was going to pick this Raiders team apart, they don't have the greatest of pass catchers there, and the Ashton Genty was, it's like you need an offensive line, and you draft a guy from that horrible conference. I'm a little bit concerned about that as well. But I think the Raiders also have improved, and this division should be pretty tough in the NFL. So there you have it. That's our previews for the NFL, and they're done. We are done with our initial previews, but we're going to keep talking NFL all through summer and have great guests and see what their thoughts are. And I'm going to probably reiterate some of these plays and maybe come up with a few other ones. We still got to get into our exotic markets as well. So there you have it. Let's talk a little college football now with our wonderful guest, Mr. Joshua Nunn.
Circa Million and Circa Survivor are back with a massive $21 million in guaranteed prizes. Circa Million. Pick 5 games against the spread each week. 126 ways to win with $6 million guaranteed. Circa Survivor, 1 pick a week, no point spread. Last the longest to win it all. $15 million guaranteed. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere. $21 million guaranteed. Visit circasports.com for details.
Now, I'm very excited to welcome back Josh Nunn from the Action Network. You can follow Josh on Twitter at StepOnADuck1. Josh, my man, it's always college football season at the Oddsbreakers. You know that. And then what I just found out, happy birthday, my friend. Thanks again for coming on. Had no idea it was your birthday when I asked you.
Kiev, thanks for having me on. There's no place on the planet I would rather be. I had a great day today celebrating my birthday with the family. We went out for dinner. We had a great time. But I love and breathe college football. We are inching closer to the season. We're knee-deep in our preparation, and I cannot wait to have our discussion tonight on the Group of 5. This is going to be a treat.
Absolutely. Kind of my first Group of 5 podcast. No better person than Josh. What's funny about college football, Josh? I don't get tired talking college football. I do in the NFL. I get tired of talking baseball, definitely NFL football, college, whatever, college basketball, but college football is the one thing that I can talk all season, my man. And I think you feel the same.
I do. I find myself in season as well, cherishing every moment because you only get the 14 Saturdays a year that are the marathons. The season is so short. The product is just so exquisite. And, the NFL has a good product as well, but the same 32 teams, they kind of run the same plays. There's not a lot of variation in the different styles.
Right.
It comes down to execution and narratives. I think the NFL is a decent product, but the college leagues, there's just something so magical about those Thursday night games, the weekday action and Conference USA games, the marathon Saturdays through 3 a.m. Eastern when the Hawaii game is finishing up. There is just something so pure and special about it that guys like you and I cannot get enough of.
Absolutely. And so many changes every single year, so much controversy every single year. And, they switch some things up and they do it right in the middle, just like we saw the playoffs get switched up to the seeds now are actually going to be the ranked teams rather than the conference champs. And I agree with that. I mean, the truth is that, as much as I loved ASU, as much as I loved Boise State, they were not top 4. They probably should have been moved a little bit differently. And, and then the fact that, some of those teams couldn't host a home playoff game was pretty tough as well. So I think that they made the correct changes, at least for the competition style. We don't need another Oregon versus Ohio State in the first, in the beginning, right in the second round like that.
Yeah, I think it's a positive change, especially because it seems like the trend is going to that 11+5 sort of 16-team model. And I think it's equitable. I think giving those teams a space in the playoff is good, but the top 4 for this year certainly deserve the bye. So I think it's an equitable change and a positive change overall.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think they're going to eventually get to 16. I'm happy with 12 personally. I think it's cool. The teams that left out, people kept – they kept talking about Ole Miss and stuff. It's like you forget the whole thing that we used to have 2 teams or even just the BCS, man. It's like remember you have to, can't lose 3 games and just have an excuse. It's like shut up. I mean, that drives me a little bit nuts. But we're just gonna experience that probably for the rest of our lives. But and more importantly, it's more interesting now because guess what? We're gonna have some playoffs with some of these Group of 5 teams that we're going to get into. And that's just the coolest thing, just to see Cinderella for a moment. Not necessarily saying you need Cinderella to be in the championship game, unless, of course, it was warranted for some reason. But Absolutely excited to see how this all shapes out. And today we're going to talk a little bit of the group of five. And why don't we start out with alphabetical order, the American Athletic Conference, my man. You remember last year, teams like Army, teams like Navy were extremely good. Tulane kind of came back and made their nice little comeback there at the end, my man. The American Athletic Conference. So the way we can do this is you can just talk about the conference a little bit, a couple points, or you can pick a team or a season win total or a future bet, whatever you have, my man. This is high-level stuff, Josh. So I'm going to let you just decide to say exactly what you want.
Well, yeah, I think the American is wide open this year, much more so than the betting menu reflects. Tulane is the odds-on favorite to win the league, but Tulane has significant losses in personnel this season. They are losing, obviously, quarterback Darren Mensa, which is a big loss for Tulane. Their running back, Mekhi Hughes, is off to Oregon, and it's just really a situation where when you look at the trenches for Tulane, it's just one of those teams where they lose a lot of production inside on the offensive and defensive line, and with the schedule setting up as such with Tulane to where they play 3 Power 5 teams. They play ascending teams like Duke and Northwestern, and then they have to go to Ole Miss. And they do have some tricky road spots in conference. So I don't think it's going to be one of those seasons for Tulane where you can just automatically assume 9 wins. I think Tulane will be a good football team, and I think the talent they have coming back warrants them to be at the top half of the American Athletic Association Conference. But I don't know if it's going to just be them just bludgeoning through the league like we saw at times last season. Army's kind of the same way. For the first time in quite some time, Army, after the darling season that they had some attrition. They had a rare portal exit in Udo, their fullback, and then they lose Captain America, Bryson Daly. Right. They're always going to have to reload a bit based in the trenches, just how they recruit and how their position groups shake out organically through how they have their system. And I just don't know if Army is necessarily a team that I'm running to the window to bet to win this league. I think Navy is going to be probably the best service academy team this season when you look at Army, Navy, and Air Force. But I think also with Navy, we saw at times last season, Navy had an exquisite stretch of football where they were just humming on all cylinders. But after the blowout loss against Notre Dame, where they really kind of got exposed in their technique, let alone the talent, but the technique and some of the things they were trying to do offensively just didn't work. Remember, this team lost to Rice recently after Notre Dame, and then they got blown out by Tulane. And I think what you saw with that Drew Cronick style of wing T offenses, once you started to get some film on Navy, and once you started to really adapt to their tendencies and their principles and their play calling, Navy was not as potent as what we came to know and love earlier in the season. So you throw all that in. Memphis is experiencing some talent loss at wide receiver and quarterback. I think this is a wide open league. I think the American is going to be a great competitive league. I think whoever wins this league is going to have a decent shot to put their name in the hat as G5 representation if they have less than 1 or 2 losses. But I kind of think UTSA is one of those teams that's poised to kind of have a rebound year. They were down a little bit by their standards. It's a very proud bunch. They have a lot returning offensively. They hang their hat on defense, and I think the defensive line and linebacker group for UTSA is shored up okay. So if I had to take a future play right now, 8-1 on UTSA is really something that I like to kind of take a peek at here in the American. I will say from a regular season win standpoint, and Kiev, you know I love regular season wins. I've been sniffing around that menu here now for over a month. I think that FAU is really going to have a troubling season here. They're changing offensive technique. They've lost quite a bit of talent that they're used to having at Florida Atlantic. And what I think about when I look at Florida Atlantic, when you line up against the schedule, they're going to play some teams that they're going to have to run the football and convert on third down and kind of stay on the field in order to keep themselves competitive. And that offensive line last year was so incredibly soft in the trenches. They surrendered 32 tacks and 87 tackles for loss. And if you just go back and look at the run stats for Florida Atlantic, they could just not get the job done. And their offensive line is a complete overhaul this year. I just don't see how it's going to work. They're bringing in Zach Kitley, kind of a pass-happy attack. And I just don't see it going well in year one. I have them favored in about 3 games or so. They've got to play UConn in the non-conference, Maryland, FIU, and then they've got all the usual suspects in conference play. It's a tougher slate for FAU. I think they're going to be worse than what's projected this year.
Yeah, very interesting schedule for them. I mean, the fact that they're down makes the at FIU, at Maryland, definitely a lot harder looking. The Florida A&M should be a win, but then Rice, they're going to be probably better than them. You got teams like at Navy, at Tulane, East Carolina ended off. It's 4.5. You said, was that the number?
Yeah, no, it was plus money at BetMGM, so you can get some pretty decent odds yet on under 4.5 for Florida Atlantic. And the defense is a complete mess. If you go back and look at who's returning at all 3 layers of the defense, an already bad defense is going through an absolute complete rebuild in the front 7. This is a team that garnered very, very little pressure against opposing quarterbacks. They were unable to secure a lot of negative plays. Their special teams was atrocious just due to a variety of factors. And I really think that this defense is going to struggle to get stops against teams like Memphis, even UAB, who's got an explosive offense, South Florida, Navy, Tulane, an emerging Tulsa team. I think that you just see that this team is going to be just so far behind the 8 ball this year that to expect this team to win 5 is just something that I just cannot see happening at this point.
Well, I hope Tulsa emerges after going 1-7 last year in conference play. I mean, I really look like in your look here at UTSA because, they are a pretty good program when they were in the Conference USA. And, coming on here, they're actually pretty high up in the S&P rankings. They're number 63, and I like looking at Bill Connolly's stuff. Number 27 in returning production. Number 2 in returning production on offense. So that's interesting. It's not like they're necessarily known for their defense, but this team was very offensive focused over the last 5 years. If you remember, we were all over them 4 years ago, Josh. So I'm liking that look at 8-1. I think that's interesting. Navy was a shocking team at the end. They get blown out by Tulane, and then they beat Army in the Army-Navy game, which was really interesting because, Army just took the title, right? And then thinking it's smooth sailing, I think you and I both, I can't remember, I was on Navy that game, and that would turn out pretty cool in mid-December, right prior to bowl season. And then they took care of business against an LA Tech team that did not belong in bowl season. So I found that interesting. But then again, I just think that both teams, Army and Navy, are going to struggle. And sorry, I forgot to mention, Army's the one that took care of LA Tech. Navy beat Oklahoma in bowl season. I just confused those. But that
great
was
second half for Navy.
Oh, that was a fun game. Seeing Oklahoma get upset by that's what bowl season's all about. That was wonderful. Kind of right between Christmas and New Year's on the 27th there. That was fantastic, man. So good stuff. Let's move. Go ahead.
Well, the last thing I'll say about UTSA as well is it's really important for anyone when you're assessing a future, especially with these teams that have 14, 15, 16 teams. We talked about this the last time we were together. You see an unbalanced conference schedule where some of these teams miss the more highly regarded foes. And so when you look at UTSA in league play, they open up at Temple, then they get Rice, North Texas, and then they get a bye week. A couple key spots. They host Tulane, they host East Carolina, and they host Army. So all of the tougher teams that they're going to play in league play, they get at home in the Alamo Dome in that environment that they usually have success in. And the road games in conference play are very winnable. And I just see this team piling up the wins quickly. I think they have the advantage in the trenches when you look at the majority of the teams they play. And it's just a favorable schedule for me. And at that price, yeah, it's a no-brainer that UTSA is going to rebound and have a strong season.
All right, let's move on to Conference USA here. And who I like, my man. The team that I'm on in this year. And how do you not like Liberty, man? This team is poised to run the table, right? They are poised to make it as far as they want to go. And the thing about Liberty is that this team, they have money. They've got more money than anybody in those. And I don't even know why. I can't remember. I think I researched it once. But for some reason, this team, has a good amount of money. And they got a quarterback in Ethan Vasco there that transferred in from Coastal Carolina. And before that, he was in Kansas. And if you watch Coastal Carolina last year, you know that it wasn't their offense that was the problem. It was their defense that just couldn't stop anybody. That put Ethan Vasco in some tough situations because they couldn't balance the run with the pass anything after the third quarter. So I think he's actually a better quarterback than people think. He's a solid kid, a strong kid. He's tall enough. I think that he's going to fit great into this system here at Liberty. And I took over 8.5 at -130. I am guessing that thing is gone now. I think it's well past 8.5 when I tweeted that, when I sent you that text. It's 9.5 -110 in most books right now. So what are your thoughts on this conference?
Well, I'll start by your wager, and it was a fantastic wager just based on the mathematics. I generally value a half a win at about 50, 60 cents, and so a full win, you're getting about 110 cents worth. So my price point on that, 8.5, if you think 9.5 is a fair line, -110, 8.5 should have been about -210. So at -130, it's an absolute no-brainer to make that play. I like what Liberty returns. You had mentioned the pocketbook. They're willing to pay through the nose in the NIL. They have the endowment with the boosters. They have a group of people that are backing the football program that are committed to having a winning team at Liberty, and we've seen that in some of the personnel they brought in. I actually think Vasco and his skill set really translates well to what Liberty wants to do. We've seen them run their quarterback quite a bit. We've seen them use RPO. They kind of have that quirky style offense that Jamie Chadwell patented over at Coastal Carolina, and I think his skill set will fit in just fine. One of the reasons I like Liberty to potentially run the table in Conference USA this season is the fact that they didn't do it last season. I was stunned at times last year with how apathetic Liberty played in games against some of those teams like New Mexico State, where they had to have a miraculous comeback. They were down 17-0 against East Carolina in a game that was delayed by 4.5 hours and finished in the middle of the night that they had to come back and win. Stunning loss against Kennesaw State, losing against Jacksonville State. There was this point in the season where they just played such apathetic football, where they were just going through the motions. And I firmly believe that this is a situation that just did not sit well with Jamie Chadwell. I think he's going to coach his team a little bit differently this season. I think they're going to have a fire and a real urgency to win now. Mm-hmm. I do think they're the best team in the league, and so I think outside of any sort of long shot future that you're trying to take, I think Liberty is about a touchdown better than any of these other squads. Western Kentucky is significantly down and losing personnel. They're going to take a step back. Jacksonville State, no team in America was decimated by the portal and lost production as Jacksonville State was, according to Bill Connolly's rankings. And just looking at the personnel in the two deep, Sam Houston State is significantly down compared to the tough squad that we saw last year. And you know what? Louisiana Tech, they're one of those teams that we just have not seen put together yet under Sonny Cumbie, and I just don't know if this is the year either. So I think Liberty is the obvious choice, and still at plus 140 over at DK. I think that's a position that you'll be very pleasantly surprised with as we get into the later weeks of the season. Now, I will say there was a team in Middle Tennessee State that I think can kind of put some things together if things go well, and they were 30-1 earlier in the offseason. That was just simply mispriced, so I took a little money on that. It's down to 18-1 or 16-1 at some places, and I think if all the things go well for Middle Tennessee with some of their returning personnel on offense and with their lighter schedule, there's a chance that they could sneak into that game, at which point I'd have the opportunity to take a position the other way and guarantee myself a little money. But the strong play here is Liberty. I think that this is a team that is certainly destined to get back to the championship game, at which point they should probably be about a 6.5 to 8.5 point favorite minimum over whoever they play. Flames, I think, for sure.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad we have some agreement there, and great number on Middle Tennessee State. That is a fantastic number there that you got. So nothing wrong with taking that, and you can even take both if you want these right now, because Liberty is going to be the favorite, but you can hedge out of that if you wanted. It looks like you were a little bit bearish on a New Mexico State, maybe as well.
I am. I mean, if you just look at what's returning for New Mexico State, I don't know that a team had worse quarterback play in America than what New Mexico State had with Awad. Now, they bring in Logan Fife from Montana, and he did okay in the Big Sky last year against that level of competition, but he did not wow by any stretch, and he certainly did not wow when he was playing at Fresno State, which is the reason he transferred out in the first place. But when I look at New Mexico State, they have significant losses in the running back and receiver room. So the explosive players offensively that they did rely on are going to have to be replaced. But the absolute worst thing about this team is that they are going to be decimated in the trenches. Their offensive and defensive lines are absolute complete rebuilds, and the defense was already a struggling unit. And so for them to try to hold down the likes of Liberty, Western Kentucky, they have to go on the road at Tennessee, at UTEP, at Louisiana Tech. They play an emerging Tulsa team. They play an emerging Kennesaw and Middle Tennessee teams that I think, while not necessarily strong contenders in Conference USA, those three teams, Tulsa, Kennesaw, and Middle Tennessee, will be better than expected. And so that just puts New Mexico State further behind the 8 ball. I'm very, very concerned in the fact that their top 6 defensive linemen are all gone. 3 of the 4 starters in the secondary are gone. And I just see very, very little resistance from New Mexico State defensively this season. So I was able to pull a number of under 4.5. The consensus on this market is minus 120, minus 130, but it was plus 120 over at DK. And so that sort of variance alone is enough to get yourself in a positive EV position. So I did take Las Cruces under 4.5. I think it's going to be another struggling season for the Aggies.
Yep, not ranking 92 in returning production. That definitely not helpful. And you explained why, losing all those defensive players and only ranking 112th in returning production on defense right there. That's just not going to do it. Yeah, I'm down on them as well. Like you, Jacksonville State losing their coach, obviously, back at West Virginia. Rich Rod, can you believe it? He actually did a pretty good job there, but I think that they just got completely hacked now, that he's gone. And if you want to look at returning production, Jacksonville State ranks worse than some of the incoming teams like Delaware and Missouri State. Jacksonville State ranks 135th in returning production, only returning 24% of their offense and 32% of their defense. This Jacksonville State team is going to be terrible, and I think it's definitely worth a look. Did you get 6.5 there? Is that still available?
Still available, it is. Yeah, it's pretty widely available everywhere, if I'm being honest with you. And I think still, I'm just looking at my board here. Caesars has a pretty good number on that, as I think DK was still a fairly decent number as well. I'll pull it up here.
Under 6.5 minus 140. That's not terrible.
It's not terrible. I think Caesars was pretty decent as well. But, Jacksonville State, if you look at how their season played out, they were absolutely decimated defensively against Coastal Carolina, Louisville, and Eastern Michigan. Coastal and Eastern Michigan were honestly 2 really poor teams in their leagues. And really the corner turned for Jacksonville State after Huff was inserted at quarterback and really started cranking with that offense. But even so, with Jacksonville State, it took a miracle for them to beat Louisiana Tech. They only beat FIU by 3 points. They pulled away from Sam Houston late in a game that was competitive halfway through the fourth quarter. It was just one of those situations for Jacksonville State where they were very fortuitous and their offense really carried them at times in the season. The defense remained very poor. And with all of the losses offensively and a completely new group with a brand new coaching staff who I'm not really that positive about. I think they kind of settled on a coaching hire. And I know he has ties to Alabama and recruiting in that area and whatever else, but I'm not super excited about what they bring in with Charles Kelly. I think this team is going to be completely a new look team. It's not going to be the same explosive team that we've come to know and love. And I think Jacksonville State will also struggle to pile up the wins this season, especially, my goodness, with who they play in the non-conference with. Central Florida, Liberty, Georgia Southern. I mean, that's just a string of tougher G5 teams and a Power 4 team in UCF that I just don't see the wins piling up this season for Jacksonville State. Going to be tough for them.
All right, a couple quick questions from a few viewers. Philly J, are y'all fans of Southern Miss this year? I took a 30-1 Sun Belt Champs flyer on Southern Miss. I'm going to let you go first on this, Josh.
Well, we'll deep dive the Sun Belt later on in the show. I think just purely from a number standpoint, there was probably some value there. It was actually as high as 44-1, and the win total over 4.5, I think, is really good. Interestingly enough, there's another book out there that's pretty widely known, USA regulated book that puts out numbers for will a team win 6+ games this year. So you're essentially getting over 5.5. And Southern Miss to win at least 6 games was plus 105. So that specific book thinks that Southern Miss is going bowling. Over 4.5 was minus 115 earlier in the year. And I think you can still find that somewhere about minus 145. It's as high as minus 190. Don't pay that. But I think you can still find Southern Miss over 4.5 minus 145. They were really penalized in the regular season win and conference betting menu by the helmet sticker of who they were and for how poor they've been the last couple of years. But this will be a completely different team with Marshall's head coach going to Southern Miss. They brought in an influx of talent in the portal. And I think Southern Miss is going to be very, very competitive in the Sun Belt. I have a team that I like specifically in the Sun Belt, which we can talk about later. But I think Southern Miss is going to very significantly surprise some people in how quickly they pile up wins. I have every single game on their schedule considered winnable. I don't care what the power ratings say. Even the Mississippi State game, I would not be stunned if that's a 3 or a 6 point game late in the fourth quarter. It was 17.5. It's down to 13.5. And it's just one of those things where that team is really picking up some positive sentiment and some steam. I think Southern Miss is going to be significantly better than expected. I do.
Yeah, when Huff went over there, man, it was head scratcher. Yeah, but you know that it's a huge upgrade. I'm not sure what they paid him. Must have been a lot. I mean, this team was 1-11. They don't rank great in returning production. I bet you they got some transfers though, and something I didn't dive deep enough into yet, being that it's still a little early for me. But I expect them to definitely take a step up because of the coach, and it's just so funny when I look at the other people's rankings, like the power ratings from the S&P. It's still in the 120s. In the 120s, it's hard to get above that. But a lot of those efficiency type systems just takes into the last 3 years in returning production. They just kind of it's hard to kind of upgrade from a coach, right? And who they're bringing in at quarterback. Do we know their starting quarterback there? I didn't get to the Sun Belt, but maybe you did, Josh.
Yeah, and it's really it's a name that we should keep an eye on. Braylon Braxton, who played at Tulsa, 19-2 touchdown to interception ratio, 1,600 yards, and 65% completion. So I think it's going to be a really positive upgrade at quarterback. Braylon Braxton is a dynamic athlete who can run the ball a little bit, and he's very accurate with the ball. They've got some P5 transfers at the receiver position that'll immediately make an impact on the passing attack. And this offense will be much more competitive and will see not only an increase in scoring, but they will put their defense in significantly better positions than they did in prior seasons as well. So simply with Braylon Braxton being inserted and his accuracy, again, the 19-2 touchdown to interception ratio, 65%, 1,631 yards, a very, very solid player, and ran for 665 yards last year. So he's going to be certainly the guy to get the call and a very dynamic player for Southern Miss.
52 transfers for Southern Miss. They rank 60th on 247 for transfers. That's next to Iowa. That's in between Iowa and Iowa State. That's ahead of Notre Dame just for pure number of transfers, right? Which is absolutely insane. You look, they're surrounded by Power 4, I guess you throw in Oregon State, but Power 4 type teams, right? They're surrounded by them. Just shows you how many players that they're bringing in. 43 3-stars, 1 4-star player. Yeah, Huff's not messing around here. He's trying to build a program, and there could be a massive shift here. And that's what you got to factor in this year, because we have to understand that everybody's getting hacked by the Power Four. Every team is facing that. So the good coaches are going to prevail, and the good programs. And when there's a shift in programs, a team doesn't have to worry so much about returning production because they're just going to get it organically through the transfer portal, right, Josh?
Very much so. And there's no bigger place of importance in that than the G5, when those teams are just significantly decimated by players that have had successful seasons leaving. And so anybody you can pull from the portal and really trying to recruit that in your own locker room to stay there is really significantly important. And then the coaches matter as well. Another thing I like about Southern Miss, and we'll leave it at that, but Blake Anderson, a fantastic coach that has ties to the Southeast, coached at Utah State. He was fired. He petitioned that he was wrongfully terminated from his position. That's still being adjudicated, but Blake Anderson's the offensive coordinator there at Southern Miss, and you cannot tell me that he's not going to coach with urgency and intensity and passion to try to get back into the head coach level somewhere at FBS. I think that him, as an addition, a great offensive mind at Southern Miss, is really going to also be really impactful for that team. The coaches that are coming in and people that you get in the portal are really, really impactful, despite sometimes those teams not having significant production at the P4 level. They're still very, very good players.
Connor, I'll get to that question about game of the year here at the end. We gotta blow through the rest of this, since Josh and I just love to talk too long about this stuff. The MAC, Josh tweeted me something. We have complete agreement. Why don't you just lay it down on what we like in the MAC?
Yeah, so when I look at the MAC here, Toledo, usually year in and year out, Toledo has the best talent in the MAC. Their roster top to bottom is about 3.5 points better than about any MAC team. But they do have this Achilles heel of Jason Candle, and they've got this coach that just consistently flubs games that he has no business losing, and just seemingly is not able to put it together throughout the course of an entire MAC season. So I don't know how anyone's running to the window to bet Toledo, but you look at the other contenders in the MAC, and Ohio completely loses their staff. They lose a ton of pieces on that successful MAC championship team for Ohio. Now, they do have the quarterback and stud running back that are returning, but they just lose so many significant pieces. Miami, Ohio, I think will be okay, but there's a lot of production lost on defense for them. They bring in Daquan Finn, should be okay. Bowling Green, who we can talk about, loses just an unbelievable amount of production and very, very hard to replace. There's this sneaky little team here, University at Buffalo, that I think is going to be really pesky in the MAC this season. I took some conference futures on Buffalo at 8-1 and also plus 750. I know you did as well. I absolutely love what Pete Lembo is building there. I like the transfers that Buffalo took in offensively. I think that they're going to be a really solid offensive group. Their defense returns nearly everybody. They do lose Sean Dolak at linebacker, who was a producing linebacker and kind of the heart and soul of that defense. But when you look at the rest of the linebacker group, the next 7 players are intact. For Buffalo, they've got 7 of the top 8 defensive linemen that are returning. Everybody's back in the secondary. Pete Lembo is certainly going to focus on special teams. And I really like Buffalo to win the league, specifically because when you look at league play, their first 6 in the MAC are at Kent State, they host Eastern Michigan, they're at UMass, they host Akron, they're at a descending Bowling Green, and then they're at Central Michigan. All 6 of those are not only winnable, but I think Buffalo will be significant favorites in those matchups. So now you're looking at a team that's piled up the wins. They need to just win one of their next 2 in order to secure a spot in the game. They host Miami and they host Ohio University on weekday home games. I think the way the schedule and the personnel lines up, Buffalo is an ironclad at that price, an ironclad bet for me. I would absolutely find the best number that you can, and a number that's come down. There's been some betting groups that have released Buffalo. I've talked about Buffalo ad nauseum for the last 3 weeks. I know that you like to play and you've put in a position on them. And so that number is coming down, and I think people are starting to see it the way we do.
Let me just tell you one thing about Buffalo, and we're going to get to this at the end. Them to make the playoffs in most books are 30 to 1, 40 to 1. That should kind of tell you something. You can get it at 100 to 1 at DK right now. Just throwing it out there. I love Buffalo here. And the fun thing about talking about Group of Five is, one or two of these teams are going to make the playoffs. You know that because that's their rule. So that's where you get the diamonds in the rough here. And we'll get to that. But no, I love this schedule for Buffalo, man. UConn at home, right? At Minnesota, they could mess up Minnesota and upset them that very first game. Maybe they don't, but still, if there's a hiccup with Liberty or Boise or some other teams, they could be the front runners coming in, and then the rest of their schedule is very doable. They get Troy at home, who's a little bit scary because they return a lot of production, and they also get Ohio at home, and they don't play Toledo. They don't even have to deal with Toledo until maybe the championship game. I like that quarterback Taquan Robertson coming in because I think he's matured. He actually had a very good year at UConn before he transferred to Kansas State. Unfortunately for Kansas State, the quarterback didn't get hurt there, so he was stuck at third string. He couldn't do nothing about that. So even on a poor UConn team back in 2023 when UConn was pretty bad, he completed 60% of his passes, 12 TDs, 6 interceptions. He can run the ball. I think that this Buffalo team is poised to win, and you can get them over 7.5 right now at plus 120. With this schedule, Buffalo is one of my favorite plays, my man. So both huge agreements right there. Let's move on to the Mountain West Conference. And I think we both align on this, but how much I'm not going to say dislike Genty. I just thought he was overrated. But if I'm right and Genty is overrated, that means that this Boise State team, who ranks 9th in returning production, is going to be stacked again. I think that this Boise State team, and the Wi-Fi is going down a little bit here. I think this Boise State team is going to be a very, very tough out for a lot of these teams coming on in. Boise has a pretty favorable schedule this year. Don't get me wrong, at Notre Dame is going to be kind of tough for Boise State. But you know what? I don't think they get punished so much if they can kind of keep that within respect and they just run the table again over at Boise. Their win total is 9.5 for a reason, because their schedule is a little tricky. You remember Boise State had to go to Oregon, last year as well, but their returning production is very great. Madsen's there. There were some of the receivers are there. A lot of the defense is still intact. I think Boise wins it, and I found a minus 125 earlier. I think before you probably could have got even a little bit better, but I just don't see anybody competing. I know San Jose State's a little bit of a trendy team, but I remember how I lost that plus 20 last year on that, and I was, oh my, I'm still hitting my head for that. But it's just because Boise was better at the end. Boise toyed around and played with their food the first half. I wish I just made that a first half bet, clearly. But I just don't see anybody beating Boise, because I'm really down on the Mountain West. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that they're the second or third best Group of 5 conference. So why don't you break down the Mountain West for us, Josh?
I did extensive research on the Mountain West before the win totals came out, and I was just projecting where I would think that these team win totals might be posted. The absolute first win total play that I made was Nevada under 4.5. And when I saw that come out, I had to pick my eyeballs up off the floor when I saw that. I was thinking it was going to be 3.5, and I was still going to go under. So when I saw 4.5, I had no choice there. But I looked at Utah State, Air Force, San Diego State, Wyoming, Hawaii. These are all just disappointing teams, and I think it's fool's gold for any of these teams when you look at them not only surpassing their win total, but just trying to see these teams ascend to the top of the Mountain West. Really, I think there are 4 teams that could potentially get into the game if things go right, and that would be Boise, UNLV, San Jose, and Fresno State. Boise is absolute head and shoulders above every team in this league, and the power ratings also say so. I say on a neutral field they're 11-point favorites against anybody. And I just think that with the talent that this team returns, and even when you look at the schedule, I don't think that the schedule is too terribly tough in league play to where this team isn't going to be able to pile up the wins, and they'll likely ascend late in the season, which is what you want. They'll have a tricky spot at Air Force. You know, they got to go to South Bend, but then they get to regroup and host New Mexico. So South Bend won't beat them twice. They host UNLV, which is a real wild card. We don't know that this UNLV team is going to be any good. They may not be garbage, but they're going to be a completely different looking team than what we saw last year with Barry Odom's bunch in Dan Mullen's first season. But I mean, my goodness, at Nevada to close the year, at San Diego State, and then hosting Colorado State and at Utah State, they should pile up the wins in league play very quickly. And even if they were to slip up somewhere in conference play, maybe it's at Air Force or maybe it's hosting Fresno State, 7-1 in league is going to get them into the game, at which point they'll be like we just talked about, a 10, 11-point favorite. Minus 420 on the money line. You'll be in solid position there at minus 125 for them to win the league. There is a team that I think could make some noise this year, kind of under the radar team, Fresno State. I think they have an absolute slam dunk hire in Matt Entz, who coached at USC last year and North Dakota State before that. They bring in E.J. Warner from Rice to play quarterback for the Bulldogs. Their defensive coordinator, Snab, was really good. They plucked Nick Benedetto from Northern Illinois, and they got about 5 or 6 of those Husky starters on defense to come to Fresno State with him. And I think that that's going to be a real underrated defense. I think Fresno State is going to get back to really being a more physical football team and running the ball and playing some hard-nosed defense. And against the teams that Fresno State plays on their schedule, that will serve them well in the trenches. So I think if you're dying to look at a long shot, plus 900, plus 950, I think Fresno State has a chance to get to that second spot where they would then play at Boise in the Mountain West title game. But my goodness, just look at the power ratings, look at the talent, look at the way the schedule lines up. We really didn't compare notes on this beforehand, and I'm trying to find some ways for you and I to maybe have a little disagreement here, but it's hard to disagree with Boise in this case when they're just going to be 10, 11 points favored better than any of the other teams that are in this league. And the bottom half of the Mountain West is just so stinking bad.
Oh, it's
Mexico,
so bad.
Nevada, Utah State is so bad.
You know, and that's what it is. It's like the minus 125 is off. It should be minus 300. It should be minus 350. The number's off. It's off by a lot, in my opinion. And they're going to be in the championship game, even if they lost 2 games. I mean, the number is so far off. You're basically just betting them to win their championship game at minus 125 because you know they're getting there. You know, it is. This Mountain West is historically bad, and Philly J asking me how Genty's overrated because he was a top 6 draft pick in a historically bad defenses conferences with the defense. This was a historically bad Mountain West last year, and when he played Penn State, I'm sorry, he was 3.5 yards per carry. Even when they tried to get him more at the end to get him 100, and it's not like Penn State's a bad defense. Don't get me wrong, man, but it's just. It's compared to where he was picked and where he was looked at. I think he's a fine running back. He was the best Boise State had. He was the best running back in the Mountain West Conference. I think he was top 3 in the nation. I mean, if you call that overrated, whatever. I just don't think he was I personally like Judkins a little bit more, but in a couple, maybe O'Marion Hampton. But Genty was in my top 3 no matter what, so I'm not hating on the guy. But I'm just saying overrated is with respect to what the market looks at, and that's all the only reason I said that. And I just think this Boise State team is extremely stacked. And yes, thanks for showing up, Bobby. We love it when Bobby shows up. Appreciate you watching the show as always. And yeah, Philly, you're right. Yeah, just like Josh said, Fresno State brutal road schedule. Absolutely. So. Someone loves Step on the Duck here. Riley 2-0 versus the SEC as a USC coach. I love that. Love the name there, my man. Step on the Duck's an awesome name, as we know. And we have a few minutes left, so we got to blow through this last conference before we get to that one question that Connor had. That moves us to the Sun Belt. And we already, well, at least Josh already killed it in the Sun Belt with Southern Miss. But why don't you say a few more things about this conference?
Yeah, similar to what we talked about in the Mountain West, but I think you've got an ascending team in James Madison, a James Madison program. It's a proud bunch. It's a group that has really rallied the troops in years past, and you think this bunch should have about 2 or 3 Sun Belt championships at this point, but they don't have any. They weren't eligible to win it, and so you've got this team that really hasn't, on paper, accomplished much, but this team, I think, is one of those teams that could really run through Sun Belt play this season. I really like what Bob Chesney is building there at James Madison. I think that the additions that they've received in the portal have really been well suited for James Madison. I think the defense is going to be rock solid by Sun Belt standards. And I think James Madison is one of those teams that you see, 20, 22 to 1 to make the playoff. I mean, my goodness, if they go to Louisville and they lose that game by 7 to 10 points, that's kind of a win for them. And you look at the rest of the schedule, they'll be in a non-conference battle with Liberty, kind of a regional Virginia matchup there. But then the rest of the Sun Belt schedule, based on who they have to play in Sun Belt League play, they host Louisiana Lafayette, they avoid South Alabama, they host Georgia Southern, they get some of these tougher teams at home. And I think the Sun Belt, which was once regarded as maybe the preeminent G5 league just a couple of years ago, I think the Sun Belt at large is just substantially down compared to what we've come to know and love with them. Coastal Carolina's way down. Marshall's going to be way down. Even Texas State, for all the love Texas State received for the last couple of years, I mean, they kind of fizzled out. They never did live up to the expectations that people had for Texas State. App State is down. Georgia State's going to be really, really a bad football team. Troy is not what they once were. And so I think this is the year for James Madison. I think they're going to run through that league with very limited trouble. I think the non-conference sets up well for the Dukes, that they're not going to really get beat up too terribly bad. DK had plus 400 on James Madison. Everyone else came out at like 250, 260, 270. So go get you some James Madison and sit back and watch them when they get into that Sun Belt title game and host it.
Absolutely, man. I didn't make the bet yet. I'm probably going to join you. I think it is their year. They do get App State at home, which is huge. Coastal's definitely down again, and they'll finish up at Coastal Carolina, so I'm thinking a win right there. Texas State is massively down. I think last year was kind of their window last year, and they blew just a couple games they shouldn't have blown. They almost beat ASU last year, if you remember. Of course, James Madison has to go to Liberty, which is going to be a great test for James Madison. At Louisville before that, great test. And that's the reason I'm not necessarily going to take them to make the playoffs, although it wouldn't shock me if they did beat Liberty. And Boise State has a couple hiccups here and there, and maybe an undefeated James Madison team could sneak into those playoffs too, and I find that real interesting. So no disagreement here. And Bobby says, the motivation to hang a banner in the Sun Belt finally is huge, and I agree with you as well. And they're a great recruiting program, and I think this definitely could be their year as well. Well, that moves us to an interesting subject, and that is exotic props or futures that you may like, or anything to make the playoffs. And I kind of already mentioned it. It's not like first of all, I am taking Boise State to make the playoffs again, because I think that they're going to be the highest power rated team. I think the market's going to like them the most. They just kind of hang with Notre Dame a little bit, which they might be able to do. Notre Dame's kind of in that championship year. That could be a championship game hangover year, and that's a real thing, and I wonder if, Notre Dame maybe even is not as good as we think. Who knows? I'm taking them at plus 200. You can find them at plus 190 right now, and so I don't mind that. But I also think that, why not take a shot on a Liberty at like a 12 to 1, which you can get right now when they have the easiest schedule and the most money. I mean, an undefeated Liberty team, you have to be pretty convincing to take an undefeated team off, because you remember how embarrassed they were back in the day when UCF was undefeated. It wasn't even that long ago. It was not even 10 years ago yet, where they came and beat Auburn in that number 3 Auburn in their bowl game and finished undefeated. It's just one of those things. And yes, schedule should matter, and I do agree with that. But you can only play the teams that are in front of you that year. Of course, UCF did beat a couple smaller Power 5 teams. But, this is a situation where they're just going to have to throw one in there. And if you're sitting there against a 2-loss Boise State team and you have a Buffalo team that's either 0 losses or 1 loss their very first game at Minnesota, it's going to be tough to keep that out. So Buffalo at 100-1 is my long shot, just for some beer money or something, whatever you think is cool. But why not? Why not the Bulls? I like their coach. I like the quarterback they have gone in. I love their defensive returning production this year. I think the rest of the MAC is down. So that's what I'm going to go with, Josh.
I like it. I don't have a ton of content for this segment as far as something that's really out there or exotic, but I will say that one thing that I can appreciate is that some of these shops will allow you to parlay some of the conference futures together, and so you can get a pretty good price if you throw in some Boise State with Liberty with JMU. You can get a pretty decent number there. And so one of them that I did do is I took out James Madison, Boise State, and Buffalo all to win their respective conferences, 88-1.
Well, there you go, 88-1.
Yep. So I did those three together.
That's wonderful. Yeah, 88-1 is massive, and that's just like, maybe one of them makes it. You're not sure which it is. And if it's Boise, you only get 2-1 to make the playoffs. Hell, just take them to win their conferences, parlay together. You get 88-1. Hell yeah. That's great for this segment, Josh. So absolutely love it. Real quick, we had a question earlier from Connor about games of the year lines. It's funny. I have attacked them in the past before June 11th as it is right now, but I haven't done it this year. He's talking about Toledo plus 11.5 at Kentucky. I mean, all you have to say is Jason Candle, and I don't want anything to do with that. But if you also look at Kentucky's recruiting rankings, they got 7 4-star guys coming in. They have 19 3-star guys coming in the transfer portal. Kentucky is a stacked team. And, they're an SEC team, and I expect them to really want to put it on Toledo when they play. So I'm not touching that line. I imagine my power ratings probably have it pretty close to that, maybe more towards 10 even, but I can't bet Toledo, Josh. Have you looked at that or any other games of the year?
Really haven't looked at that. When I think of game of the year, I'm thinking of any sort of lines that are provided that are outside of week 1. So I really haven't taken I've taken a strong look at the week 1 lines, and Toledo, Kentucky is not necessarily one that I was dying to get to the window with. If I'm going to play Toledo, I would probably want 14. So I have not made a play on that yet. I wouldn't be absolutely stunned if Toledo went in there and made a pretty competitive game of it. And they really have a prowess in their program for going in there and playing up against competition, as opposed to another strong MAC team like Miami of Ohio, who is generally known for junking their non-conference. And my goodness, season after season, we've seen Miami of Ohio go into the Power 4 environments like Kentucky or Miami, Florida, or teams like that, and just get completely blown out in games where you think, oh, maybe this MAC team will be competitive. Not so. But, yeah, not really on my radar. A couple game of the years that I think would be kind of interesting. Civil War game, Oregon State versus Oregon, even with how strong Oregon is, 27.5. My goodness, that seems high. It just seems like year in and year out. I know it was a little different story last year, but Oregon State generally keeps that one quasi-competitive, so one I might look at. I think Washington is probably due to kind of put it on Washington State this year. Washington State has 26 FCS players in their 2 deep. They've lost their entire coaching staff and are replacing with FCS-level coaches from South Dakota State. And the entire nucleus of talent at Washington State has dropped by probably 5 or 6 points just over last year's team, which we already saw a very talented Washington State team significantly run out of gas last year. I think it's going to be a tough season in Pullman for the Cougs, and I would play Washington minus 10.5 in the Apple Cup. Last one I saw, and I don't necessarily venture into the SEC waters a ton, but I think I saw Georgia minus 5.5 against Tennessee, and that's one of those situations where I could kind of see it getting sideways for Tennessee this season. I like Joey Aguilar at quarterback, but he struggled at times against Sun Belt competition, and it just kind of seems like one of those spots where that Georgia front seven could absolutely eat that team alive, and you might be seeing live lines of 16.5, 17.5. I think Georgia is one of those game of the year lines at -5.5 when they play Tennessee, where I might want to pluck that one.
Yeah, Georgia coming up. Georgia coming with a vengeance this year, I think. And the quarterback looked pretty good, in my opinion, for a guy being getting thrown into the playoffs like that. You know, he didn't look that bad to me. Kentucky, according to Connor, Kentucky's program not trending in the right direction. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, they got Zach Calcutta now. I like him, or Calzada, I should say, Calcutta. I kind of remember when he played for Auburn a little bit, and I know he was in Incarnate Ward last year, but I thought he was a pretty talented dude at A&M, and I don't know. I could be wrong, but they got Dowdle now at running back, another great transfer there. I don't know, man. You could be right. I got to look into both these teams a little bit more since it's a little early. There's still a little more research that I have to do personally. Josh might be done with his, but I'm not quite done with mine. But no, I'd still rather take Kentucky in my opinion. Bobby's like, I like the UW call, Duck. So there you go. We got some fans going here. Connor's like Penn State -4 versus Oregon. I took Oregon under 10.5 their season win total from the last time Josh was on. So, I like Penn State that game, but I don't think Penn State is necessarily a championship team. I think they're for sure a playoff team, but I just don't think that Aller isn't proven it to me that he can win a championship. I think they do get Oregon though. This ain't Michigan or Ohio State that always gives them fits. This is kind of the newcomer. So I think they get Oregon, but, do I want to lay -4 now? Not really. I don't. I mean, I'm not super high on Oregon's quarterback, though. I'm hearing not so good things about him. So,
yeah, and you've certainly got the spot there for Penn State, where I'm sure they have that one circled and ready, especially after how that Big Ten championship game played out last season. I think that the spot would certainly call for Penn State to have a strong performance. And, Oregon is going to do Oregon things in the Big Ten, which seems to be a three-headed race year in and year out, but I mean, that is one where it could be one of those tougher spots for Oregon.
Well, it's a whiteout too, isn't it? I think it is a whiteout game too. So I think that's what you got to factor in. Is it the tax and the whiteout that you're getting for here? Maybe. Probably in a game.
And going back to that other play too that we had a question on too, which I definitely appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. We love the engagement from the viewership. I'm not throwing any shade on the Toledo play as well. And Toledo is one of those teams that could certainly get up there and get in that environment, and you look up in the third quarter and Toledo's up 10 and you're like, what in the world is going on here with Kentucky? But I do think Kentucky returns a significant amount of production and who they have transferring in as well. I think it's just one of those where it's just not really on my radar. So I don't hate the Toledo play necessarily, but it just wasn't on my radar to really give a strong opinion either way.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm not taking Kentucky either until I dig into it either. Kentucky, for getting the amount of transfers they get and still ranking in the top 50 in returning production is kind of interesting to me. Maybe Stoops got it going over there a little bit. I don't know. Then Georgia Tech -3.5 against Colorado. Connor, we talked about that last game a little bit, how I missed the -1.5. I personally would have liked Georgia Tech at 1.5. At 3.5, I don't, just because it's the first game. It's too early to be taking a road favorite at 3.5. It's too early for that. Even if mid-season they should be able to cover that. First game, first games can be weird.
Yeah, a little travel there for Georgia Tech, a little out of their element and playing at elevation. It could be one of those things that can affect their performance. It sounds like Dion's been dealing with a few health issues, so he's actually incognito for some time. So could be interesting offseason there for Colorado. I think, Colorado does have to replace some significant talent. We all know the names that they have to replace with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. They do have a really shored up offensive line that I think will suit them well, a lot better. I mean, their offensive line the last couple of years has been bailed out by Shedeur Sanders heroics, and I just don't know that we're going to be able to expect that sort of performance necessary. Even though it is Caden Salter, I just don't know necessarily if we're going to get that sort of heroic quarterback play that we saw game in and game out last year with Colorado. Running back position is gone. The top 4 receivers are gone, including Hunter and Jimmy Horn. I mean, it just seems like the pieces are needing to be replaced in key positions. Linebackers completely decimated. Some secondary guys are gone. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily one to think that. And I'm actually a lot higher on Georgia Tech this season than many. And I think with their ACC schedule, they have a pretty decent shot to pile up the wins in ACC league play. But I don't know. I personally like Georgia Tech probably more than many do. And so I think this is kind of that breakout year for Brent Key and what he's been building as a program. Remember, it was really, really interesting in that last game of the season with Clean Old Fashioned Hate, where Georgia Tech had that game all but won against the Bulldogs. And I mean, there was some questionable calls. There was some stuff.
Don't get me started.
They didn't make the plays. But I mean, Georgia Tech had that one firmly in hand until they didn't.
Yeah.
And so I just think Georgia Tech is an ascending program, and it could go one of two ways. Colorado could win the game outright, but you could look up at that game when it's 28-10 in the third quarter and be like, man, why were we afraid to lay 3.5?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think my power rings have Georgia Tech covering that. You know, it's just not the type of game I like to bet with being the first game over 3.5 road chalk. It's just one of those. It's like your power rings might, and that's why people adjust their power rings too fast after week 1. It's just like, dude, it was week 1. You know, let things marinate a little bit. Maybe on week 3, they would have destroyed them. It's just that we caught them like right when all the kids were kind of nervous and the plays weren't completely squared away. And, you know, there's all kinds of crazy things that happen. And Josh, man, it's past my bedtime, dude. I got to get these kids down, my man. But, hey, awesome talking to you. And guys in the chat, thank you so much for chiming in there, Connor, Bobby, all you guys, you know, Riley 2 versus 0 SEC, Philly J. Really appreciate all you guys, you know, hanging out with us and stuff and talking football. There's going to be a lot more talking football with me and Josh. But, Josh, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and get your great info?
Yeah, so I'm with the Action Network. I write up about 10 to 12 articles weekly with them. I've also increased my role with them, so we're going to be doing some video content and podcast content, which is already launched with Big Bets on Campus. I'm on Twitter and I'm just going to be around the podcast circuit again, so I'll be on with you. We've got a couple mutual friends that do some telecasts and some podcasts that will be on, and so there will be plenty of places to find our work and find our content, and certainly appreciate the engagement here and love being on your show, Kiev.
Oh, man, we love it. We love having you, Josh. We'll be texting daily by day talking college football and have you back soon. Make sure you guys follow Josh at StepOnADuck1. Oh, all right, my friends. That turned out way longer than I expected, but I hope you enjoyed the content. Maybe you went on a long walk or just split this podcast in two, you know, to be able to listen to it. I wanted to get to some UFC, but unfortunately, I don't have the time. I'm just going to tell you I am betting Kamaru Usman at plus 230. He's just better than Buckley, but he's beaten much greater contenders than Buckley. I know he's 38 years old, but I saw him fight Khamzat Chimaev, and he looked pretty damn good to me just about a year and a half ago. So, man, I mean, Buckley might be able to knock him out. You're probably not going to get great odds on that, but I'm taking Usman here. He's going to hold him against the cage like he does to everybody, in my opinion. But that's all I got for the UFC for this week. We'll have more for the weeks to come. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Icebreakers. Email us at info@theicebreakers.com. Have a great weekend, games, and go get some winners.